Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Two World Podcast. My name is Ken, and I'm so very happy to be here. And as we watch, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, the changing of a season into fall, or the more elegant word autumn, we've decided to give our take and talk about what this season has meant to us through the years. But before endeavoring to do that, I am very privileged to work with two gentlemen, our co-hosts. And first, we introduce to you.
I am Barney.
Thank you, Barney. And secondly, we have.
I am Jacob.
All right. And we hope all of you will enjoy what we bring to the table today about this interesting season of autumn.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that really touches on early memories for me, and I would imagine it's probably that way for the both of you and our listeners because childhood is filled with vivid experiences from the fall, particularly if you live in a part of the country that has that changing of the season with the vibrant colors for the leaves and all of the traditions associated with trick or treat and Thanksgiving. And so it's going to be really interesting to kind of think about like that thread of fall from the earliest times of our lives onward throughout. And for me, the topic, I can't help but connect how it has impacted me as a child up through now being a parent and raising my own children and seeing it affect them. And so I'm really excited that we're going to be talking about this. And when you brought it up as an idea ahead of time, I was looking forward to this episode. So who came up with the idea for fall? Was it you, Ken, or was it you, Barney? Where did it originate?
I think that I had it on the document list, but
The list.
I think I put it on there just because you and I had done an episode about winter. So then I thought, well, let's do the other seasons one of these days too. But for me, like fall was when I was just writing up the list. It's kind of a throwaway, I was like, oh, it's just fall, there's it's just fall, and then when we started thinking about it, it's like, oh wow, really a lot does happen in the fall, and there really are a lot of important holidays and a lot of other things, and then here in Japan. Yes. I maybe one thing I was thinking about fall is that, like when does fall start? Who knows when fall starts? Like when I teach the seasons in one of my, English classes, I ask the kids, what season is it? Is it winter? No. Is it fall? Yes. But then they don't quite really know when is it fall, They're like, I said I had a class on September 30th. And I was like, is it fall? And they're like, no. And I was like, actually, yes. And they're like, what? No, fall starts tomorrow. They thought they're like, yeah, October 1st is fall, it's so hard to know. And I was like, well, wait, don't you guys know last week we had the day off because it was the first day of fall? So in Japan, the first day of fall and the first day of spring are holidays, public holidays, I guess, because those are the days. I can't say why, but those are very, very important days for tending to the family graves. So for that reason, then it's a day off. And a lot of people do go to their family graves, which, it's one grave, not to get off on a different subject, but it's one grave, and then every member of the family is represented at that grave. And then so you go there and tend to it in different ways. But yeah, here in Japan too, of course, with the seasons, there's also lots and lots of fruits and vegetables that are ready, persimmons and Asian pears and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different types of mushrooms. There's like one really super fancy mushroom called the matsutake mushroom. It's like really expensive. And everyone, for many years, everyone's like, well, it's fall, we have to eat matsutake. And then a joke became, you'll see on TV, they're like, why are we eating this matsutake mushroom again? And they're like, oh, because it's fall. Oh, but I personally have never had one, but it's like there's all these kinds of traditional foods and a real abundance of different flavorful foods that come into being into season here in fall. So yeah, fall is a little bit sneaky, but there's a lot that makes fall robust that you don't think about until we sit down and have a podcast episode about it.
And yep, and given what you said, Barney, and it's always interesting to get your viewpoint from the other side of the world, you know, but also given the fact that you grew up in Ohio and Jacob and I are presently here in Ohio. Yeah, yeah, pumpkin spice, coffee shops are such a big deal now with, all the array of drinks and variety, pumpkin this, pumpkin spice, the apple cider, always a traditional fall entity. And you mentioned fruits, it's apple season in its glory now, and there's been so many different derivations of apples now through the years. It's amazing, amazing. But yeah, Jacob, are you a mushroom eater? I was thinking, mushrooms the spectrum is pretty. There are those that go, not for me, or
Yes, I do like mushrooms. I haven't had an extensive variety of mushrooms, but we do like
Mhm.
them, and yeah, it's interesting to hear about what's available there in Japan this time of year in the way of mushrooms. So, is it possible to describe the flavor profile of that type of mushroom compared to, like, just a standard, like, mushroom you get from the store here? Would be kinda interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like when I when I was growing up, a lot of my exposure to mushrooms was the Pennsylvania Dutch mushroom. Is that what is it? The can of Pennsylvania. It's
Yes,
those
the little
mushrooms, right?
cans,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then occasionally, you'd have like those kind of fresh mushrooms on salad, like the kind of beige colored mushrooms. But here, there are so many different ones, and like my first exposure or kind of getting different mushrooms on my radar was in an episode thanks to an episode of Northern Exposure where there's a homeless person who he is voluntarily homeless and he's visiting and Maurice finds out that he used to be in the service. He was a Marine and he was in Vietnam War and then now he's just coping with life after that and Maurice realizing that Maurice also Marine, wants to help him out. And then he did kind of a food drive for him. And then Maurice just kind of offhand says, someone threw in some shiitake mushrooms there. I don't know if you soak them in water, then, they have a nice flavor to them. And I thought, oh, shiitake mushrooms. Yeah, I've got those. And then, so I
Oh,
soaked them in water. But yeah, so here, like, I think probably everyone's familiar. Like these days, I always wonder, like as Japanese cuisine is becoming more global, terms like dashi and whatnot are probably becoming more recognizable. But I guess kind of like the kind of like the essence, the seasoning that comes from the vegetable, and so yeah, like using mushrooms in a soup, like just a miso soup, really gives it that nice bold, a noticeable flavor and yeah, I think they do have like a real distinct flavor. It's hard to describe what it would be. It probably must just be umami, because it's not salty, it's not sour, it's not sweet, it's not bitter, but it has that kind of robustness to it. And we have maitake and we have shimeji and, we have nameko. We have all different kinds of mushrooms that you just get. And however you cook them, in different ways gives a different profile to them. They're really quite nice. That but different from what we ever had when I was growing up. But yeah, it's one more thing to appreciate because I too wasn't such a big fan of mushrooms growing up, but then having them here, I realized that it's really nice to add to the food in different ways.
cool.
As you're talking there, Barney, I was thinking you're right to say that Japanese cuisine is becoming more and more known globally because in a way, a lot of cuisine is crisscrossing different cultures and, uh, is the pumpkin apple type of flavoring that you get here in the fall in Ohio present there in Japan, and what is that like? Is it at all similar to the fall desserts and treats that we would have?
Yeah, that's a great question because I remember how pumpkin spice I never really experienced pumpkin spice. I don't because I've never been home when in the right season, and and then we don't have it here. And I think it's because, we have the kabocha, which I think is also becoming more familiar with people in Japan, and outside of Japan, which is that it's kind of like a squash. And then if you cook it, kind of steam it, like you can even eat the rind, like it's real soft. But we don't have like the orange pumpkins, pumpkin pie, things like that. So there's no context for people to understand. We have plenty of Starbucks, but there's no context. I think I can think of four in Narita City alone, but there's no context for having pumpkin spice anything. So I think that it would be more of a seasonal, like probably the season that they have the special drink they have going, it's probably related to the Asian pear more than anything. And yeah, pumpkin spice just never caught on. And for I remember a joke that someone said. They said, I'm a regular Joe and I like my Joe regular, and I kind of do too. So when I have coffee, I just usually get black coffee. So I'm not one for those different flavors that don't belong in coffee anyway. So
A purist. I love it.
Well, that is interesting, and I think it just shows how oh, nice. Ken is holding for our audio only listeners, Ken is holding up a a nice cup of coffee right now. Um, but it is interesting to think about how the fall is experienced differently in terms of the food and the treats, depending on where you are. And maybe we could talk a little bit about since we've talked about pumpkins and apples and did you say kombucha? Is that what is or
um,
what was it? Um,
Kombucha.
kombucha. So, oh, not to be confused with kombucha, which is a
Yeah,
drink.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Kombucha, kombucha. So, maybe we could talk a little bit about some of those fall crops and things that we enjoy and that we decorate our homes with or that we eat. So, can we delve into some pictures? Is that an okay time? And I like to talk about pumpkins a little bit because I think many people will associate pumpkins with the fall. And I know Ken has some really cool pumpkin pictures. So, Ken, would you like to go first with yours or do you want me to do some? How do you feel?
Go ahead, and then
Okay.
I'll follow
Okay.
you, I guess.
I'm just going to share my screen because there's an assortment of pictures here with pumpkins. And one thing I'll just highlight here this is a pumpkin patch near us. We like to go to Ramsire Farms in the fall to pick out pumpkins, and this is a picture of Katie and Aubrey when she was very young, and
Wow.
when you pick out your pumpkin, you think about its size, its shape, but it's also the imagination of how could I carve this thing? Like, does it look like a head? Does it look like a face? Could I imagine putting nose or eyes on it here or there? So our kids would always, you know, search around looking for the perfect pumpkin, and I think that's just a really fun aspect of the fall is, that's one of those things that traditionally we'll buy and we'll carve and decorate our homes with, and then it's such a prominent thing too when kids are going around to get candy for trick or treating that a lot of homes will have them, and people will even sometimes have costumes that feature pumpkins, and I'd like to pull up here another shot here with if I can, of pumpkins. Well, actually, let me pull up this one. This is a picture here of Hannah and Micah and Katie in front of her house, and to the lower right of the picture, you might notice our pumpkins are sitting there.
Mhm.
So when the trick-or-treaters come up to get their candy, they see those pumpkins, and, we can put a candle in them when it's dark out, and then the light comes out of the holes that we've carved in the pumpkins, and it gives them a little bit of extra effect there. And then Hannah's little plastic bin that she carries around to get her candy is a pumpkin. So it's just kind of a fun fall decoration on par with, for Christmas, the Christmas tree. It's like, think of fall, at least in my mind, the pumpkin is such a huge thing. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on pumpkins? And Ken, you certainly have quite the picture to share related to pumpkins. So I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say about that.
Well, yeah, first a qualifier. This is from in Canfield, Ohio, where I grew up and did the predominant amount of my schooling through high school. It's not yet fall in this picture, but because the Canfield Fair is always Labor Day weekend, that really felt like to all of us the beginning of fall. And they would dedicate an entire building here to various pumpkins of size, shape, and color. And then there was always like the grand champion, which I can't imagine. They must bring them in front end loaders because this is not the only one that looks like this inside this building each year. There are just tons of massive pumpkins. And, they'd have to go into a field, of course, and pick this thing up and get it to the fair. But the fair itself not only felt like the beginning of fall, school never started before Labor Day because of the fair. At some time or another, probably everyone in the town worked at, contributed something to this fair because it is humongous. I believe it's the largest county fair in Ohio. And if you've been to some of the smaller ones, like in our county, Wayne County, it's like if you want a hot dog on a stick, a corn dog where there's gonna be 2 or 3 places at the average fair, there's gonna be 15 of them at this fair. It's just, it's got 15 of everything, and it's the massiveness is certainly impressive. I've been to this fair at least 50 times. You know, it's got an entire, like, restored village on the grounds, so there's a lot going on in this fair, and it's that big. But this certainly makes you feel like fall, even though it's a couple of weeks before the official date.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, yeah. That is great. And yeah, I've always liked pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns, and it it wasn't until recently, I don't know if this is just me or if this is not so well known, that I found out why they're called a jack-o'-lanterns. Is it something familiar with either of you?
No?
Yeah, so I guess the story was there was a guy in a village who was very, very, very wealthy, but also a real miser. He wouldn't share anything with anyone. And his name was Jack. And he passed away. And then the devil said, welcome to my place now, Jack. And
Right.
oh, you know what? There might be a way for you to get into heaven. There's an entrance if you can just find it. And here, take this little ember. And then so Jack has this ever glowing ember and he carves it into turnip, which he uses as his lantern, searching until the end of time for a way to get into heaven. And he is Jack of the Lantern. So he is Jack o' Lantern.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
fabulous, Barney.
Yeah.
Great bit of
So I
knowledge.
think it's
Wow.
just a thing that, we're always calling them jack o' lanterns, but I never thought, why are they jack o' lanterns?
Is it
Yeah.
do you know how long ago that legend began by
Yeah,
chance?
I think it's somewhere in Europe, and it must have been just a pretty long, long, long time ago, I would think
Okay.
that,
I was
yeah.
wondering if it was prior to Charles Dickens writing A Christmas Carol.
Mhm.
It's sort of a similar feeling there, the miserly, wealthy
Yeah,
guy,
right.
and
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
But I
interesting.
never had much artistic ability when it came to jack-o'-lanterns. I always had a real great imagination of what it might be, but I could never put that into being. For Jacob, your jack-o'-lanterns looked really nice. Do you always feel like that's kind of your media to work with?
Well, when I started out carving pumpkins, I was really bad at it, and I remember thinking, "This is so hard," and in particular, the kids, they would draw on the pumpkin with a Sharpie, and then they'd be like, "Okay, dad," like, kinda like, "Cut it out," and, like, make
I
it
know.
and I would, work, but then over the years, I got better at it.
Yes.
At first, they had these tools, these little instruments that were, like, a really short pokey tool, and it had, like, jagged e edges, and you could use it to cut, but now I just use a standard knife, like and then I used to use a certain type of scooper, now I just use a big spoon, and I've kind of found my method, and getting the seeds out of the pumpkin used to be troublesome to me, but now I've just kind of found a way that I like doing it, and for a while, we would actually take the seeds and we would if you, clean them off and then put some oil on them and some salt, you can then bake them in the oven, and they're a really delicious snack. But then anyway, so now, you know, I I'm a lot more into it, and so so that feels good. So, yeah, pumpkins for sure. I like the kids to do their drawings, and then I try as best as I can to cut them out. Sometimes, a drawing in a person's mind, "Oh, this will be great on a pumpkin," and then you start cutting, it's like, "Oh, that might be hard. Can we you know, alter it. But in general, no, it's just really a fun thing, and that's one of my favorites. And, how about for you, Ken? Do you do much cutting with pumpkins or anything like that, or
Well, I think I go to the Barney school of lack of artistic aptitude, but I I can remember as a kid, I don't remember exactly the first time cutting into one, but I thought it was kind of a cool thing because you got to use the knife and it was serious cutting, and then the goo. I thought, "Oh, what are you gonna do with the goo? I don't wanna touch this."
No.
And and, but to get to your point in question, Jacob, I've always been kind of I was always kind of a hyper kid, and I was more into getting it done to get the candle in there, so pretty basic carving. So, yeah.
I do have another angle on the question that you guys asked, and that is that you can also take the idea of a pumpkin and work it into something else. So I'm just gonna share here a picture of one year when the kids made giant chocolate chip cookies and put orange icing on them, and they were their pumpkins to decorate, and so they
Oh,
put M&Ms and M's and
man.
candy corn on
Wow.
them, and, so there are many ways that one can, work with the idea of a pumpkin. If you don't wanna, deal with the slimy innards and, of the seeds, you can make cookies and just say, "Hey, we'll have these giant pumpkin-shaped cookies," and so that's another way to go about it, so yeah. You know, the other thing is to maybe talk a little bit about so if it wasn't carving pumpkins, like, what were the deep, like, fu childhood memories of when you were, preparing food or getting ready for trick or treating, or what were the things that you did in your home if it wasn't carving pumpkins? Did you go to the store and pick out a costume with your parents, or did you brainstorm that ahead of time, or were there certain foods that your parents would prepare or that now you prepare when you get ready?
Well, the costume was certainly a big thing. I mean, there aren't a lot of greater holidays for a kid, maybe Christmas, than Halloween. You walk up to the door and they hand you candy. This is the greatest, and I'm if I remember, I have one not so nice story about Halloween that I'll share, but I remember having a Casper the Ghost costume, and for whatever reason, it was just my favorite. The only downside I remember about the Casper costume is a lot of the costumes in those days had these plastic masks
Oh,
with like a
jeez.
rubber band around the
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
and it was always kind of cutting into your face, and
Oh, yeah.
but it was I just thought it was such a cool costume. I guess it was because in what I scared easily as a child, like watching TV and so on. And, Casper was so friend oriented and happy and harmless. And I felt like I wasn't scared by that. And I didn't want to project a scary person as well. To get into the Halloween experience real quick, loved going every year. We had enough houses around us that it was a fun thing. And then you start to get older and you start to verge on maybe I can't do this very much longer. And I remember going with a friend, and pranks became sort of a thing, harmless for the most part. But this one year, guys, in particular, my buddy, and he could make me laugh like nobody else, but he was not the most under control kid. And we're at this one house and we're leaving, going down the driveway, and I'm not making this up. He takes out a can of spray paint and just absolutely pulverizes their car.
Oh, my. Oh,
And
goodness.
he's I'm just aghast. I just and he's the kind of kid that was gonna tell people that he did this that night, and people saw him. And I'll tell you, we didn't see Dave for a very long time after that. I know what it must have been like at his house when the word break
Oh,
and the
man.
cost of this repair. I imagining they had to repaint the car. I just,
Oh.
and it was such a well, it's still with me, still with
I
me
mean,
that happened.
even if it had been something like silly string that you could spray it quickly and you could wash it off, but, like, spray paint is
Paint. Oh.
so
Yep.
tricky. Oh, man.
Mm. Whew.
Yeah, just wow. But anyhow, other than that,
Well, before we transition away from you, Ken, since you mentioned costumes, I mean, Ken has a great picture with wearing a costume. So can we share that? Ken, do you mind?
sure, sure.
Okay. Okay. Coming up. This is, you have to tell us, pardon me, what, what, what this is from.
Yeah, this is our church in Worcester, Ohio, Worcester Mennonite, and we've had a tradition there now for several years of trunk and treat, which is a nice evolution into a very safe experience for kids. And in our case, it's been a nice attraction for the surrounding neighborhoods. We do get a number of families that will walk over or have driven by, and boy, if their kids are in the car, they're gonna want those people to stop and experience this. I think this was this past year in 2024, and it's great fun to be there. I decided to go as a cell phone, um, kind of a boxy cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it still gives one that experience as an elderly adult, the feeling of, I can still be a kid for one night. And just for our viewers and listeners, basically I took a large box and pasted some apps pictures on the front of it. And also for our viewers and listeners, Jacob, our pastor, who's with us today, always in the spirit of it as well, and has had some great costumes through the years. Are you finding one now,
Yeah,
or
I thought I had put one in, but I'm not seeing it. I do
okay?
have a picture of one somewhere that, yeah, one year I went as a Jedi, and then, recently I went as a Ninja Turtle, so I had costumes
Dear to your heart.
those dear to my heart, so, yes. But how about for you, Barney? What is the experience been like for you with costumes and trick or
Oh,
treating and
yeah.
that?
Since my house was in such a rural area, we would have to drive from house to house. And, I didn't think that I did it every year. But then one year I did go to my friend's house who lives on McClure, which is just a few streets down from where you live,
Yeah.
Jacob. And I thought, wow, this is heaven. I mean,
Oh,
like, we have to go back to our house to get a second bag. This is amazing. I thought that I got lots of candy just going house to house, but wow, you know, that was amazing. But as far as costumes go, I always liked like kind of thinking of my own costume, like trying to make a costume more than like getting one at the store. But now as a teacher, it's a lot easier just to get one at the store. And but well, 2 years ago we changed the lace curtains at our home. And so my wife was like, well, what are we going to do with these? I was like, oh, just save one for me. And, here I have this white curtain and now I'm a ghost. And it's just, you just throw it on your head and you're done. And then another year I bought a computer and it came in a big box. And then I thought, well, I like this because this is very, very, very simple. And then so I just cut out just a
That's
thing for
awesome.
my face and then a thing for my arms.
I
I
love
just
that.
put the box on and then I was a robot, you know?
That is
good.
so perfect,
Yeah.
Barney.
Yes. And then when I was giving out, then like it was so big that like I could crouch inside. And then when the kids came for trick or treating, I just like chucked the candy out of the hole in the front there. Just open your bag. And then the candy would just come flying out. So for me, like the simple things that
That's
don't
great, Barney.
that you just have a little imagination. That's what I really liked about a costume.
I love that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and continuing with, the Jacob neighborhood, uh, the year we moved away from that neighborhood, we came back for Halloween because Barney, like you growing up, we're now rural and
Yeah.
there's no Halloweeners out here. And with the intrusion of COVID, these people live one street over, and I forget the name of the street, Jacob, that it is.
Could it be Kinney or could it be
Yeah, Kinney.
Emgard? Kinney.
No, it
Okay,
was
Kinney.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Kenny. Our realtor lived there, and they invited us back to sit with them for Halloween. Now, this is 2021. 2020, when COVID was fully in, what they designed is their front door was up high, down to the driveway was a pretty good drop. So the guy made this long tube and they sat at the top of the stairs and just shot the candy down the tube, and the
Nice.
kids would put their bag at the bottom of
Oh,
it
yeah.
so that there was, no touching. I think they used gloves to touch the candy, and
Oh,
so he kept it the next year, so we sat at the bottom of the tube just to enjoy the really just the ingenuity that they came
oh,
up with
yeah.
to have the holiday continue for the kids. That's very cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
Well, if it's okay with you both, there's another fall topic that I think would be really fun to engage with, and that is the topic of leaves and playing in leaves for kids, like piles of leaves, and then for adults, maybe, well, adults can play in leaves too, but but also just appreciating the aesthetical beauty of leaves. So if it's okay, I have a picture to share with you from my childhood. My dad had this large trailer and we used to pile leaves on that, and he would drive the leaves down into this lower part of our property where there was like a kind of a valley, and we dumped the leaves in the valley. But I don't know if you can see this, but this trailer he had used, and we'd piled up with leaves, and I would get in that pile and ride as he would
Oh,
drive to. And so there's me riding in the
nice.
trailer, and I just think that the coming of fall is such a magnificent experience when it comes to leaves. My kids, when I would rake up leaves in the yard, they would play in the leaves just like I did as a child. And now as an adult, I'll go on walks with Katie. And this is around the Kinney Fields here in Worcester. And just as the leaves turn, they're so beautiful. This is one walk I just had to get a picture by this tree. I thought it was so magnificent. The deep yellows, and then we get to oranges and reds, and so I think the leaves in fall are so incredible. And I have a Barney and I have talked about this before, but I have a deck of cards from Japan, the flower cards, Hanafuda cards, and which kind of display different seasons. And the cards for the leaves are so vibrant. And so I'm probably going to run and get those. But if you guys keep talking for a minute, I'm going to go grab those, and then maybe we
Great.
can keep talking about leaves.
Barney, what's the change like for you? Foliage and all, and
In this area, we don't really get a lot that changes,
okay.
but I can share some photos.
Yeah,
But
please.
first, I'll say that yeah, like raking leaves is kind of the one rewarding. It's one of the yard work things that has its own reward built in. Like even if you're a teen or so, you don't mind raking the leaves. And where I grew up, of course, we had lots and lots of them. But because then you get them in this big, huge pile, and like you can see the fruit of your labor. Wow, look at this enormous pile that I made. Of leaves, and then of course you get to jump in them.
Right, right,
And
right.
and then we would put them on the garden, and then plow them in, and have add a little bit of substance to the soil in the end, and also it keeps the soil, keeps the temperature under the leaves kind of a nice steady temperature, the constant temperature for the soil too. But the one tree that we do have in the area that always changes to a nice color of leaves is a ginkgo tree. And have you ever been around ginkgo trees before?
Angie bought a small one. You
Yeah,
have a picture?
yeah. And
Oh,
this is a
no,
nice,
I'm not thinking of ginkgo, Barney.
oh,
Sorry.
okay. This is a nice walk to my son's kindergarten. And the leaves turn real, real, real yellow. And
That's
then
beautiful.
they're so nice when they're on the tree. And then when they fall on the path, it's so nice too. But ginkgo trees have the ginkgo nuts, which are actually delicious, but they are smelly. They
Oh,
really stink. They stink horribly.
huh.
Like, it's like, did someone not pick up after their dog? That's how bad it is. And then of course they have lots and lots and lots of nuts that they drop, and it's awful. But the
Mm.
picture is very nice.
Yep.
And then
Barney,
of
do
course, hmm,
like when I lived in Worcester near Jacob, we brought the leaves to the curb and then the big vacuums come along with the truck. How are they dealt with here?
yeah, I think here people will bag them, I think, and then just put them out with trash
Okay.
normally. And then of course we have street sweepers that come along, but people tend to keep, like, I never see that like at the curb, so I think that that's kind of how people tend to them. But then here of course people do not have any kind of sizable yard that you would end up with an enormous number of leaves anyway.
Oh,
But
okay.
we, hiking, of course, hiking. Oh, before I get to hiking, this is a picture that Jacob knows this location. This is the park at Narita Temple. And they have a pond down below. And this is a good bit of change of foliage.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Jacob will probably show us some momiji cards, which is a type of oak. And I'm not sure if it's getting on the camera or not. But,
Maybe if it when you're done screen sharing,
okay,
it'll be a
then
little
you can
larger. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. And, yeah, so it's nice that this kind of Japanese maple, I think, changes color real nicely even here in our area where it doesn't get so cold. And then here hiking with my in-laws in the mountains, it's such a great time to go there because once you get far enough away and then a high enough altitude, then you can see a lot of good changing of the colors and it's just a nice hike to go on.
Is that a
Um,
residential home in that previous picture?
no, that is an a hot springs. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so since we have so much volcanic, a lot of volcanic activity, I guess, a lot of plates, earthquakes and whatnot. So we have lots and lots and lots of hot springs. And and then it's a great place for a resort.
Mhm.
And then my last picture here, I think that I took not it's on Mechanicsburg Road. And I don't know if I was hiking or just driving and stopped the car and got snapped this picture, but with the sun coming up and the mist and then the leaves are kind of changing it must I forget the date that I took it, but it was in the fall, but I just thought that wow, that's really a nice photo that I wanted to include too. But but yeah, the neat thing about the Hanafuda cards that Jacob will show us is they are month by month, and then they tend to emphasize kind of the theme of that month, and so we'll see more about this here.
Yeah, so I'll try holding these up one by one, and then did you say these are called a momiji? Is that right?
Momiji, yeah, mhm.
Momiji. So it's not really coming into focus very well, but let me put up another one here. But I know Barney has a set too. These are so beautiful, and I think I love that there's this concept that you can capture the seasons in a playing card deck. What a fun way to celebrate your natural environment and the beauty of it. And this one, is that a deer in this one?
Yeah.
Would that be?
Mhm,
So a
mhm.
deer. So anyway, these cards are just a neat celebration of that changing of the seasons, and in particular these for the fall.
Mhm.
Yes. Were there any pictures on your end, Ken? I'm trying to remember if there were any that related to leaves. I'm just doing a quick scan.
Yeah,
I'm not
check
necessarily
work.
seeing, yeah, I'm not seeing leaves per se.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So so now that we've talked about like that experience of the leaves, and we've talked about trick or treating, maybe we could say a little bit about harvest and giving thanks for the harvest. Is fall a time of bounty, of being grateful for what we have, and in this time when there's this plenty of food with the harvest season, and we have this wonderful celebration once a year of Thanksgiving. And so, it's I think probably every culture has some version of some harvest type of festival. Even the biblical accounts have biblical harvest festivals, and so for us in North America, we have Thanksgiving. And so I wanted to just share a few quick photos and talk a little bit about what that has been like from my end. And if that's okay, then hand it over to you guys too. But one photo that I want to share goes back to Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And this is a very special moment because my parents were still living back then. And our two older children, Mike and Aubrey, were able to be present one year for a Thanksgiving celebration with my larger family. So we have my parents, and Katie is there, and then my uncle and aunt, George and Katie, and my cousin Megan. And this is what Thanksgiving looked like every year for me growing up. That room in particular was the traditional spot where we would celebrate, and my grandmother loved to host, and when she was living, we would have that celebration there, and then after her passing, we continued to meet in that room. Now, the interesting thing is that house was built in 1810, and it was an old tavern or an inn along the Old National Pike, and it was known as the Valentine Inn. And that room where we're having that celebration is one of those places where people were fed and they could sit and eat and look out the window and enjoy the beauty of that area. There are lots of beautiful trees there along the road, the Old National Pike, and this long stretch of this historic road is not that frequently traveled, and it's a beautiful stretch that goes from at one point Wheeling all the way to Cumberland, Maryland, Wheeling, West Virginia to Cumberland, Maryland. But there are still certain sections today of this historic route that haven't really been changed all that much. And I grew up on one of those smaller road, less traveled. But anyway, that house was located there, and we would sit around the table and we would celebrate and give thanks for the the bounty that we were able to enjoy in life. And there was also that element where there was a spiritual element too, where we would be grateful to God for the blessings in our lives. And so this is one of those moments I just wanted to share with you guys because it was so special to me to have that larger connection with my family from when I was growing up, my parents, my uncle, my aunt, with my own children and my wife, Katie, a very special time. And then, one more, if I may share, just kind of related to that is the more modern equivalent. We're just back in 2021, we were
Mhm.
able to go to Cincinnati now and celebrate with Katie's brother and sister-in-law. And now here's all of our kids. Hannah's there now.
Mm.
And just to be at their house for Thanksgiving. And so it doesn't matter where you celebrate it really as much to me as it is the people that you celebrate with and the chance to be grateful together. And so we were able to play board games and have lots of fun and eat pumpkin pie and turkey and mashed potatoes. And
Mhm.
one other final thing that I'll share, and this is just kind of quirky. But back when my mom would do Thanksgiving, she would take an apple and carve it in such a way that it looked like a turkey. So this is one of her, you know, apple turkeys, two fall Thanksgiving things coming together. So we had pumpkin cookies earlier, now we have apple turkeys. So there you go. But what about you guys? What are your thoughts as it relates to Thanksgiving? Is that a pretty prominent experience for you too, or
I For me, it could probably be an entire episode. It was a big deal, still is in some regards. For me personally, probably 35 out of the last 40 years, we've gone to my godmother's in Youngstown, and it's a frantic, chaotic scene when you arrive because everyone that arrives is bringing certain foods but yet the main things are being cooked there in a very small kitchen. But as you move away and it gets near time to eat, we're downstairs and the food is served on my cousin's pool table, and it's wonderful eating, that's for sure. For a number of years, we would do those of us that wanted to would do a craft after dinner, and again, it's just not my forte, and that's where people could just tear me up and, "What is it you're making there? It doesn't look like an angel, it looks like something that came from the underworld," but the banter was always a good part of it, and I think I'll stop there because I could go on a long time about the Thanksgiving gatherings, but they're still precious in their way.
Yeah, I loved waking up on Thanksgiving and, you know, food was already underway, being cooked, getting ready. And, but the nice thing was that there were always ways for us to kind of pitch in either, grinding the cranberries or,
Mhm.
chopping up this or that for cranberry bread or, helping with other things. And so it felt like we all, of course, my mom was the one doing majority of the work, but we all found a way to make it go real smoothly. And then we always ate, on time. And it was just so many great memories and, associated with food and smells and being together. And And of course, my oldest brother, he always like I've never been one for naps. I can never nap, but my oldest brother always took a nap, and I thought, how does he do that? And hey, this is a day off from school. Shouldn't we be doing something together? But it was just great, just being together and having that special meal, and it's something to look forward to, every year. And but then now that I don't have the chance, it's impossible to find a way to celebrate Thanksgiving just because of the school year and the work, the way work goes, that I can't get back, to have some Thanksgiving. So that's one thing that you really miss, and you notice it's approaching, and then I always thought, wow, couldn't you guys like call me and do like a video chat or something? I'll wake up, but everyone's so busy that like it never really worked anyway, and it would always be like 3 in the morning for me anyhow. So I thought, well, maybe not, but I always wanted to know, how did it go? What did you eat? Tell me, how was it? Just because even though you don't get to be there, it's the memories that you have associated with it that you still wish you could be a part of it, even if it's from afar.
Uh, if I can, one quick story floated into my consciousness. There was a year where we had a couple of Thanksgivings, when you have multiple families sometimes. But anyhow, Angie and I decided to invite a couple of people from the research and development center where we were both employed at the time here. This is probably 6, 7 years ago in Worcester, Ohio, through Ohio State. We decided to invite two of our friends from Bangladesh so they could experience what an American Thanksgiving dinner felt like. So Angie did the whole turkey and the cranberry and the salads and everything. I mean, massive meal for these two people. So we see them arriving and they're coming up to the house and we're wondering why they're carrying all these packages. And when they get up to the house, we come to realize they've brought an entire dinner with them because that's what people do from time to time in Bangladesh. So we
Oh.
had so much food sitting there. All this food. But what a wonderful experience because we know what the turkey and the mashed potatoes and the gravy are all about. We got to experience not only having these people experience an American Thanksgiving, we got to experience their food. So a fun memory, a fun memory. Yeah.
Wow, so
Thanks.
that's amazing. So then the food that they brought was traditional food that they were used to from their own culture.
Yes. As close
Wow.
as they could come to finding
Yeah.
ingredients and so on. And Angie's better at remembering specifics than me. I can't remember in particular, guys, what that food entailed, but yeah, a memorable Thanksgiving.
Wow, that's so neat.
Can I piggyback on your piggyback, Ken? And
Go
just
ahead,
say,
go.
the more you're right, we could do a whole episode on Thanksgiving, and maybe we will sometime
Mhm.
if you guys are up for it. But I remember the when as a child, my parents and my uncle and my grandma and everybody would sit at the table so long. They would talk and talk and talk, and I would get so bored, I would go under the
Yeah.
table, and they were okay with this, and I would play with my toys under the table. And as I think about it now as an adult, yeah, at the time, as a child, like, that was kind of annoying that it was going so long, and then I would get bored, but then, like, when I think about it, being under that table and having the people I love surrounding me above the table talking and hearing their voices, it's a gift. Family, these events, these memories, we're surrounded by so much that we don't always catch it in the moment, how special and unique it is, and so I'm so grateful that these things exist, that these times of a gathering, exist where even if you don't catch it in the moment later, it's like you think back, "Wow," to be surrounded by loved ones like that and to celebrate and enjoy each other is truly one of life's greatest pleasures, I think, and enjoy things to enjoy.
Sure.
So,
And it's great to hear you say those words, Jacob, because I always feel like Thanksgiving gets a little bit of a bad rap because more and more here in America, Christmas has already begun. And it comes so shortly after Thanksgiving that sometimes that gets lost. But it sounds like in both of your experiences as a younger person that the preciousness of that occasion
mm,
has been upheld.
yes, it's probably important to say too, and I realize that with any holiday and probably any season in life, this is the case, but it can be bittersweet, and for some people who don't have the opportunity to connect with loved ones, or if they're going through a period where they've lost loved ones, or it's a hard time, that the holiday or the fall season could be challenging, and so I guess part of the question is, like, when we realize that when we're enjoying our time, how do we, like you and Angie did, show hospitality to other people, or loop other people into our circle, or include them when we realize that they don't have a place? Because, like, this past Sunday, there was a student we were sharing during the message time. We had posed the question, like, are there times in your life where you felt welcomed or greeted? And somebody said something about a family in our church, the Hartman family, welcoming them into their home during a holiday. And I think we don't always think about the travelers or the visitors or people in our lives during these special events that don't have a place. And so when we make room at the table for them, I think that's very meaningful and is an important part to remember too when we talk about gratitude and harvest and Thanksgiving, to make space for people who, yeah, who could benefit from that and would enjoy it. But I know that there were a few other pictures that we didn't get to yet. I know, Ken, you had one that you were gonna send your granddaughter, a video, is that right? Was it a granddaughter, or who was it,
Yeah,
somebody you
I made it. Yeah, Angie said, "Why don't you make a video of the harvesting machine here?" So I apologize for the commentary that you may or may not hear, but it was cute. For our audio people, this year we have a soybean field behind us, and early last evening it was time for the harvest. It's a remarkable process. I mean, it's done by 8:30 in the evening, and these machines are amazing.
Mhm.
look at that.
Yep, you can see the rotating piece, and then below it is like a large shovel, which funnels it into the mid part of the machine, which then separates the pods from the other parts, the leaves and the stems, and it actually pulls the seeds out and puts it in that big bucket on the top there. You can see our neighbor dogs
Yeah.
that are probably not enjoying this experience. Pretty loud machine.
Mm. Why?
That was awesome.
Mm.
But for the grandchild, they live in Portland, Oregon, and they certainly get out of town now and again, but I don't know that she gets to see this sort of thing, so I'll have to send that one along.
Mhm.
Ken, I also noticed that there was a building that you took a picture of. Did you wanna talk about that before we close our episode, or is that something you wanna pass on for now? What do you think?
I'm trying to remember which picture,
Okay,
Jacob.
well, let me pull it up, and then you can decide. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Hopefully, it'll come up here in just a moment if my computer agrees.
Oh, yeah, just a fond memory. It's where I did my undergraduate work in Oxford, Ohio at Miami of Ohio University. It's one of the buildings. This was not when I was there. We actually drove down, Angie and I and a longtime friend of mine drove down to see her son who was doing postgraduate work at Miami University. And this was basically the English building on campus. I felt very lucky to have spent my 4 years here because there were rural settings very nearby, and it was a very, very pretty time in the fall there. The whole feeling of it was always enjoyable. And again, I'm lucky to have been part of that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Were there any other pictures that you wanted to share, Barney, or any other things that either of you would like to mention before we close our episode?
Yeah, then in that case, we would like to extend our thanks to all of you who are joining us today through the video or just as a podcast as we talked about fall, which I initially thought was kind of underrated, but or just kind of a throwaway season, but boy, it starts the start of the school year and the fair and Halloween and harvest and Thanksgiving and even technically the Advent season starts in fall as well. So, fall, I hope that you will think, as we have discovered, is a very, very rich time of the year with a lot to offer and a lot of great memories associated with it as well. And probably through our conversation, some of your own memories have surfaced as well. And we would like to again say thank you for tuning into the Two World Podcast. For Ken and Jacob, I'm Barney. And we hope that you are looking forward to the next episode as much as we are. And we'll see you then. And goodbye.